Story 1. The Last Child on the List. It was December 19th, 4 days before Christmas, when I first noticed the boy. I had been working as a mall Santa for 3 years. The job was simple and repetitive. Smile for the kids, ask what they want, give them candy canes. Most days felt exactly the same. Crowds of families, flashing cameras, and endless Christmas music. Nothing unusual ever happened there, until the day I saw him standing at the back of the line. The boy looked about 7 or 8 years old. He was standing completely alone. That wasn't strange by itself, but something about him felt wrong. He wasn't playing or looking around like the other kids. He wasn't distracted by decorations or the animatronic reindeer nearby. He just stood there quietly, and the whole time, he was staring directly at me. Not excited, not nervous, just waiting. When he finally reached the front, my assistant Priya asked his name. He said his name was Daniel. She guided him to the small red chair beside me. He sat down calmly, without hesitation. I asked the usual question, "What do you want for Christmas?" He looked straight at me and answered quietly, "I want you to come to my house." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. Kids say strange things sometimes. I told him Santa was very busy this time of year, but he didn't smile or laugh. He just kept staring at me. Then he added something else. "My mom really wants to meet you." Something about his tone felt unsettling. Priya took the photo and gave him a candy cane. Then Daniel quietly left the platform. I assumed that would be the last time I saw him. But the next day, he came back. Same time in the afternoon, same dark coat, same silent expression. Standing alone at the back of the line again. When he sat down again, I asked if he forgot something yesterday. He said no. I asked where his parents were. He said his mom was waiting in the car. Then I asked again what he wanted for Christmas. He gave the exact same answer as before, word for word. "I want you to come to my house." Something about that moment made me uneasy. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. I asked him where he lived. He gave me an address on a nearby street. It was close enough to walk from the mall. I told him Santa would try his best. He nodded calmly and took the candy cane. Then he quietly left again. That evening I mentioned it to mall security, just in case something felt wrong. A kid showing up alone twice seemed strange. The guard said he would keep an eye out. He didn't seem too worried. At that time, neither was I. I thought maybe it was nothing. But the boy returned again 2 days later. When Daniel sat beside me the third time, I asked about his mom. This time he pointed across the mall. A woman was standing near the food court entrance. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring directly at me. She didn't smile or wave. She simply watched me in silence. Then she slowly walked away. Later that day, security checked the address Daniel gave me. The street existed, but the house number did not. There was no building with that number anywhere. The address simply didn't exist. That's when the situation started feeling truly strange. I tried to ignore it and continue working, but things only became worse. On December 22nd, Daniel returned again. This time the woman was with him. She stood directly behind him in line. Her hand rested calmly on his shoulder. When our eyes met, she whispered something to him. Daniel stepped forward and spoke loudly. "My mom wants to know if you've decided." I suddenly felt very uneasy. I asked him what she meant. He repeated the same question again. "If you'll come to our house for Christmas." I asked the woman to come speak with me. She walked over calmly. Up close, she looked younger than I expected. But something about her calmness felt unnatural, like she had been rehearsing this moment. I explained that I didn't do house visits. She simply smiled at me. Then she said something strange. "You have before." I told her she must be mistaken. Our mall never offered home visits. She kept smiling quietly. Then she said, "I know which one you are." Before leaving, she said one more thing. "We've been very patient." Then she took Daniel's hand, and they both walked out of the mall together. That night, security called me. They confirmed the address again. It didn't exist anywhere in the city. That's when I started feeling truly disturbed. I didn't see Daniel again until Christmas Eve. I was changing out of the Santa costume. Priya knocked on the door suddenly. She said someone was asking for me. Not for Santa, for me by my real name. I had never told them my name before. That terrified me. When I returned to the platform, the woman was waiting. Daniel wasn't with her this time. The mall was nearly empty. Most of the stores were already closing. She looked at me quietly for a moment. Then she said something chilling. "He was so sure you'd come." I asked where Daniel was. She tilted her head slightly. Then she answered calmly, "He's at home, waiting by the window." I asked how she knew my name. She stayed silent for a moment. Then she said something that still haunts me. "You used to come every year." I told her she had the wrong person. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said Daniel would be disappointed. After that, she turned and walked away. She headed toward a service exit in the mall. That door was always locked from the outside, but she pushed it open easily, and it opened for her. Then she disappeared. Security later reviewed the camera footage. Daniel appeared clearly in every recording, but the woman's face was strange. Whenever the camera faced her directly, the image blurred. Not pixelated like normal footage, just blurred, as if something was hiding her identity. Even the guards had never seen that before. I never worked as a mall Santa again after that year. I still don't know who Daniel was, or who his mother really was. I don't know how she knew my name, or how she opened a locked door. But every December, I remember her words. "You used to come every year." And somewhere, a boy may still be waiting by a window on a street that doesn't exist. Story 2. Sector 4 doesn't answer. It was 2 a.m. on December 18th when I realized something was in that warehouse with me. Something that had been there for a while. Something that was not in a hurry. I worked overnight security at a fulfillment warehouse for 6 years. 300,000 square feet of shelving, conveyor belts, and loading bays. During peak Christmas season, I was the only one walking those floors at night. I knew every sound, every shadow, every quirk of that building. On a normal shift, I'd walk 7 or 8 miles doing my circuit. The building had its own sounds. The hum of the conveyor on standby, the groan of the structure, the beep of automated scanners. I knew what belonged. That's what made December 18th different. Something didn't belong. I turned into aisle 4J at 2 a.m. and stopped. The motion light hadn't come on. I waited. 1 second, 2, 4, 6. Nothing. I swept my flashlight down the aisle. Standard shelving, boxes, nothing wrong. But the light hadn't come on, and in 6 years, that had never happened. I logged it as a faulty sensor and moved on. 2 aisles over, I heard it. A long, slow scrape, like a heavy box being dragged across concrete. I stopped walking. It stopped. I waited 30 seconds. Silence. I went back to 4J. Nothing out of place. I told myself it was a box settling on an upper shelf. At 3:11 a.m., my radio crackled. It was Greta, the control room dispatcher. In 6 years, I'd heard her voice go elevated exactly twice. She sounded elevated now. She said, "I've got a camera alert in Sector 4. I asked which aisle. She said, 4J, but the camera in 4J is offline. I asked her how a camera throws a motion alert when it's offline. She said that's what she was trying to figure out. The camera had gone dark at 2:08 a.m., 10 minutes after I'd reported the light sensor. The last person logged into Sector 4 was me. I hit the manual light switch in 4J. The fluorescence came on. The aisle was empty, except for a large box sitting flat in the middle of the floor. No pallet beneath it. The shelf it came from was undisturbed. Whatever this box was, it hadn't fallen. It had been placed. I scanned the label. It was a returned product, a life-size promotional Santa display, the kind that stands outside department stores. Full costume, painted face, stationary pose, one hand extended. The return reason from the original retailer read, "Figure does not stay in position, moves during the night." I called Greta and told her what I found. She pulled up the last camera frame from 4J before it went dark, 2:06 a.m. She said, "I see the aisle, empty, but..." She stopped. I waited. She said, "There's someone at the far end, near the loading bay corridor. They're wearing red." I told Greta to call the police. Then I watched the adjacent aisles. 90 seconds later, she came back on the radio. She said, "I've got movement in 4K. The aisle directly beside me. I moved toward it carefully, keeping close to the shelving, making no noise. I reached 4K. The motion light was on. The sensor had tripped in the last 60 seconds. Greta told me the far-end camera had a blind angle, a support column blocking the last 15 feet, wide enough to stand behind. I looked at it. I said quietly, "I know you're in there." Nothing. I said, "This is private property. Show me your hands." Nothing. And then, a sound I've replayed every night since. A low, rhythmic sound from behind the column. Slow, steady, deliberate. Like someone breathing. Like someone who was not in a hurry. I did not walk to the end of that aisle. I backed out and repositioned where I could watch both entrances to 4J and 4K. Greta stayed on the radio. Police were 8 minutes out. For those 8 minutes, nothing moved. Whatever was behind that column stayed there, waiting. At 3:29 a.m., the motion sensor in 4K switched off. The light went out. 60 seconds of no movement had timed it out. Greta said quietly, "Where did it go?" Neither of us had an answer. Police arrived at 3:34, 2 officers. We swept the entire building, all 6 sectors, receiving, loading bays, break rooms, the maintenance corridor. Every door checked, every bay seal confirmed, every corner walked. We found no one. At the base of the column in 4K, one boot print in the dust. Large. Not mine. Not either officer's. The box from the middle of 4J's floor was gone. Not back on the shelf. Not anywhere in the building. Gone. The camera in 4J came back online at 3:51 a.m. No one had touched it. 2 weeks later, during a routine audit, the item number for the Santa display came up as unaccounted. Not missing. Not transferred. Not returned to vendor. Just location unknown. The box, and whatever was inside it, was never found.
Boxes go missing in warehouses all the time, and inventory mistakes happen. But the boot print was fresh.
and whatever made it had been standing there for a long time, breathing slowly and waiting for something. I still remember the note on the label. Moves during the night. Whoever wrote it was trying to warn someone. I just wish I had read it before 2 a.m. Story 3. He asked for you specifically. It was 11:52 p.m. on Christmas Eve when the call came in, 8 minutes before midnight. In 11 years as a 911 dispatcher, I thought I'd heard everything a person could hear through a phone line. That night proved me wrong. The caller said his name was Gerald. His voice was calm, almost too calm for someone calling 911. He slowly gave me his address, then said something I had heard before, but never quite like this. There was someone walking on his roof. I asked if he had actually seen someone, or if he had only heard something moving above him. Gerald said he had only heard it, slow footsteps across the roof. He told me the footsteps had been going on for nearly 40 minutes. Heavy steps moving back and forth above the house. Then, 5 minutes before he called me, the sound suddenly stopped. I told him officers were already being sent and asked him to stay on the line with me. Through the phone, I could hear him moving slowly through his house, checking the locks on his doors and windows. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Gerald mentioned something small. His kids were spending Christmas with their mother that year. The house was empty except for him. At 11:57, his voice suddenly changed. He said, very quietly, "There's someone at my door." I asked if the patrol unit had arrived yet. Gerald said no. Someone had just knocked once, a slow, heavy knock. I told him not to open the door under any circumstances. Instead, I asked him to look through the small window at the top of the door and tell me what he saw. Then he said, "He's wearing a red coat, a big red coat, and a hat." I asked if the person was still knocking. Gerald said no. The man was just standing there, facing the door, completely still. Then Gerald suddenly said, "He's moving." The figure stepped off the porch and began walking around the side of the house toward the backyard. I updated the patrol unit and told Gerald to move carefully to the kitchen window so he could see the yard behind the house. Gerald looked outside and said the yard was dark. No one was there. Then he stopped mid-sentence. His voice dropped to a, "He's on the roof again." Through the phone, I could hear it too. Slow, heavy footsteps moving across the roof from the back of the house toward the living room. Then they stopped. The patrol unit pulled up at exactly 11:59. The officers said the roof looked clear and no one was on the porch. But something else was there. Sitting on the front porch was a large red sack tied tightly at the top. When they opened it, it was completely empty. Behind the house, officers found large footprints in the frost leading from the back fence to the wall of the house, and then stopping. There were no prints leaving. Later, one officer told me something he hadn't said over the radio. At the bottom of the red sack was a folded piece of paper with Gerald's name and address. Beneath it was a single line. "He asked for you specifically." A week later, security footage showed the red bag had been on the porch long before Gerald ever called. Ever since that night, every Christmas Eve, I check my porch before going to sleep. And I check it twice.